I was watching The Bill the other night.
Oh, it's a great show, isn't it?
Yeah. But one thing that caught my eye was the way that they had one of the beacons, and as it did a revolution, they put a new frame in, like a new section in or segment in, and then it flashed again, and you got another new segment. I thought it was brilliant. Particularly when we're doing hospital transfers. John can probably tell you what they've got planned for the 1st of April, around that time. We do have a service, our counter. It's more rapid. But see, exactly like some more rapid.
Then what we've had after Buru or that morning on they got this in as well and then everything started to do it from there on. And what
Council
off the floor.
Up to me one day and said, when is the next service on? Another guy offered me money, thinking I was a salvo.
I don't know. I think this one was made sitting with this
You're not going to a rescue, are you? Whereabouts?
You're on highway.
That's Rutherford's area.
Are we going to do that? We better do the interview on that.
We'll edit it later on.
We will edit it, don't you worry. So if you stuff up, it doesn't matter. Or if you want to have a cough, or
yeah, right. No, right.
Stop and hit Pete.
you want to stop and hit me, or call me a silly bugger or something.
I'm recording.
Okay. John, it seems the ambulance service has an incredibly rich history.
That's correct. It certainly has, particularly in this area. It has very, very rich indeed.
Okay. How basic were the services at the beginning of the ambulance service?
At the beginning of the ambulance service, back in this region in the early 1900s, there's virtually no recognised ambulance service motorised in particular. It was all just horse and cart job, either push barrow type or horse and cart. Horse and carts were run by the local hospitals, which would have been Newcastle Hospital and basically Maitland District and also Wallsend District Hospital.
Okay, so you're going to have to keep talking to me, unfortunately.
Right,
don't
okay,
turn away,
okay.
otherwise Cookie just gets a side.
Right, okay, yeah, right, yeah.
But,
you're right.
and keep
on that spot.
You're in concrete.
You're in concrete.
Right,
you can wriggle around up here.
Oh, good. Right, I'll stay there. Okay.
But you've got to stay there.
Right, okay.
What sort of problems did they go through with the horse and cart days? I mean, have you done any study into that?
Yeah, well, actually, the horse and cart naturally would be very, very slow. I think one of the problems would have been to catch the horse for start to put in a horse and cart. And particularly if I can relate back to Boolaroo days, the core would come through the T3 Frith's shop, and then they would have to go up the sulphide and catch the horse, hitch it to the cart, and then trot off to the case. So naturally you would think that we're not looking at a very sort of short span of time for responses, I would think, a quarter of an hour, maybe more. By this time, of course, naturally the patient would be deteriorated, and also the roads in those days were non-existent as well.
Gee, services have changed, haven't
Yes,
they?
that's for certain.
Okay.
Sure.
So the horse and cart, then they moved on to what old Fords were they?
Basically, the discipline committees, all they did was get what they could, was possibly a Ford T-model Ford truck, and convert it into some type of ambulance where they canvas hood on it, and that's what they progressed from there to the steel bodies in the early 30s. So we're looking at canvas hoods before 1933.
What about with the training and the drugs that they used in the early days? How primitive was it, or how basic was it?
Well, it would be
Primitive,
very basic, because the first officer was trained. He used to be a driver for the local doctor, and so he basically just knew first aid. And there was no schools in those days like there are today. There would basically be no drugs. There's no painkilling drugs whatsoever. Splints would be about the only thing, and bandages is the only thing at his disposal, basically. That's it. No life-saving goods at all compared with today.
When did the drugs start to come into it, and when did the training start to come into it then?
The training, I think the actual first schools was in the early 60s. That's when the boards in Sydney started schools. But before then, so it was just local. We had our own local first aid classes and refresher nights and training nights and things like that. But until the early 60s, there would have been no schools at all. But then, as far as life-saving drugs go, they didn't come in basically till the early 70s, really. So paramedics up here didn't come into the late, I think 78, I think it was roughly, up here. So I mean, you're looking at basically before then, only trilene gas was the only gas we had as far as analgesics go. That's all, nothing else. We didn't even have Entonox in those days. Entonox came in about 78.
The ambulance service hasn't always been run by the government, has it? How did it start out?
Well, each district area run their own show, even though they were accountable to the board in Sydney. The Ambulance Act was passed in 1919, and then from then on they were all under control of the board. But basically all the state ran their own show till well into the late 70s, early 80s. Then we came under the Health Commission. Newcastle here in particular came under the Health Commission in 77. So most of the state would have been then as well.
So say in the 50s and 60s, if I wanted to get an ambulance, how did that work? Was I in a health fund, or did I pay the ambulance when he or she came, or how did that work?
Yes, we had local subscriptions. Newcastle actually were the forerunners of what we call the local ambulance subscription. Newcastle was very, advantaged because of the fact they had the BHP. We had all the industries in Newcastle, so therefore we had industrial subscribers, and they started that off in here in Newcastle, and that went throughout the state. So each person in their own area would have paid to their own local ambulance scheme. But it wasn't until many, many years later where we had a standardised scheme which covered the whole state. You could pay here and yet be transported to, say, down in Canberra, up in, up the north of the state, this type of thing.
What do you see as the great step forwards in the ambulance service? I know that's a huge question to ask, but over those years, like Carrot was talking earlier about how wonderful communications are getting so much better now. I mean, what do you see as the great changes in the service?
The vehicles, the equipment, and also the communications as well, and the training. I'd say that would be the four biggest changes, I would say. Vehicles have changed, say, considerably over the years. We're now getting into the area of looking at more luxurious or more spacious vehicles, updated, better rides for the patients and so forth. We're getting into the Commodore ambulances and also the GMCs as well. And I feel that in the next few years we'll have some really good vehicles.
You must have a lot of respect for those people that started the first ambulance services. I mean, what sort of characters were they, do you think?
I think I think some of them would have been really down-to-earth people, because basically all they had was their basic first aid knowledge, right? But I think they've got the one desire, and that is to help people. That's what we're all here for, right? And even today I feel that we get a great satisfaction from helping people. That's what it's all about, really.
Well done, mate.
Really well done.
I'll go and ask the bloody boss.
Okay, well, you'll have to give me your phone number just in case.
Oh yeah, I'll give you no problem at all. So I've got a lot of history on this early years.
what I feel. This is my miss portraying what it used to look like because I learned what we know.